Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamas Borsai from TÜV Süd America. And I am here for delivering a more difficult topic. I will have some good news and some bad news for everyone. How many medical device manufacturers we have in the room who has devices on the market or consultant? All right, so we have a couple. This presentation is mainly for you and for consultants. So let's start with the good news, okay? So what's the good news? We have a new regulation in Europe. I am representing a notified body. We are doing approval work for getting your products on the market in Europe. After around 20 years, Europe updated its requirements for the medical devices. And now we got the medical device regulation. Okay, what is the bad news? That was the only good news what I delivered to you today, okay? From this point on, this presentation will go downhill, I promise you, okay? All right, so let's talk about timing. This is probably the single most important slide what you guys have to understand. And I will try my best to explain what will happen. So the medical device regulation was published this past year, 2017 May. And there is a 3-year transition period until 2020 May that everybody gets ready with its product to the new regulation. No grandfathering. So whatever product is on the market in Europe today, if you don't reapply, your product is out of the market. Okay? There is about 4 years or 5 years grace period if you will, but it is not for all the products. Date of application of the MDR, or medical device regulations, is May 26, 2020. Some areas are harder hit with this, some areas are not so bad. If you have orthopedic implants, you guys will have lots of work, okay? And you will have to take care of lots of things. If you have products in the development line today, you should read this regulation, because most probably those products will not hit the market under the MDD. Notified bodies will be able to evaluate your system, and this is being pushed out each time I talk to someone in Europe by a couple of months. If you asked me about this a month ago, I told you, second half of 2018. Now they talk about first quarter of 2019. I will put a big fire there. And I mean it. The big fire means there that we will have in Europe the remaining notified bodies approve all the medical devices for the European market about a year. That means that you have one chance. You have to pass the first time you get the evaluation. If you hear this presentation the first time, if you hear these dates the first time, I can tell you, it's further bad news. You are already late. Okay? Anybody, any question on this slide? Because that's very important that you guys are clear with this and you understand what is coming. All right. Does anybody have any sleeping problem at the evening? Okay? You guys have to read this. It is now 175 pages. If I read 2 pages at the evening, I am out, and I have a good sleep. Unless I am reading some really interesting area. And then I cannot sleep for the whole night. Okay? But what I really want to mean with this, that this is really a big change. It is not a facelift. It is not like your CEO will tell you that, hey, just put there some quick Band-Aid and it will be done, and don't complain that you need much more money. You will need much more money. If you don't get the support as a regulatory responsible person at the company, you guys might have a chance to fail. So I don't know how far the budgets are done for 2018 or 2019. Put their money, a lot. I will tell you the details why you need that money. Okay, this presentation, when let's say we have a full-fledged presentation, it's about 250 slides for about 1 day. I tried to tell you the most important parts in about 30 minutes. So 7 most important changes. Okay, much more strict pre-market notification approval. Today, when somebody gets on the market in Europe with a medical device, they have, for the clinical part, about 80% literature review, which is very similar to what you do for the 510K in the US. When this is on place, less than 3 years, 80% of the devices will need clinical study for getting on the market in the European Union. You will not have a chance to get around that. So Europe will be much more restrictive and much more strict on getting the products on the medical device market in Europe than the US FDA. Oversight of notified bodies. I think I don't tell anyone any, let's say, surprise or anything news that the notified bodies were different on evaluating many things in the past. There were more easygoing notified bodies, there were more difficult notified bodies to deal with. Germans are famous about difficult to deal with. I am from Hungary, okay, so close enough. So having said that, the Commission said it's enough. We want to see that the notified bodies are working on the same way. The root cause of the different approach was that the bodies who were responsible for controlling the notified bodies, some of them did a better job, some of them didn't do such a good job. There will be one auditing body in the future, visiting all the notified bodies. So there will be very similar interpretation of the rules. So easygoing notified bodies will be either same difficult to deal with, or they will be out of business. Just how serious they are, all the notified bodies are out of business by 2020, May 26, if they don't reapply and they don't get notified by the deadline. Inclusion of products without medical purpose. There are some products which are not really for medical purposes now in the scope. We have the hardest time to address those audience because usually those people don't come to our presentations. There will be an EU database, similar to your FDA database over here. It will be much more transparent. There will be lots of interaction for all the manufacturers with the database, also the same for the notified bodies. Each product, when you send it to Europe, based on this database and based on another new thing, the UDI, each product will be in a database and there will be a yes or no for entering to the European Union and passing custom clearance. For all the implants, there will be an implant card. If you think this is all the bad news I am telling you, this is half of it. The other half of it is the clinical part. So anybody who is in a clinical consulting business, you guys are at the right spot because you will get lots of orders. Everybody is responsible for a clinical division. You guys need to hire, because otherwise you will be not able to provide all the requested records, and you will not able to run all the procedures at the company what you will need to run with this. Data about real-life use of the device, this will also go together with all the clinical changes, and I will have a few more words about that. This is a quick review of the medical device regulation as of today. It will not change anytime soon, okay? So you can see that there are 10 chapters, and there are some chapters which, let's say, did not change too much. There are chapters which change completely. And there are lots of new chapters. You really have to take a quick look at this table, and you have to pick the right stuff to read first. And probably the first chapter I would read is classification. You know that the approval or compliance process in Europe is based on risk, and there are categories. There are new classification rules. You have to verify if your classification is correct for your devices or if it got reclassified. Lots of companies will be impacted with reclassification. And with reclassification, you know the direction. It goes up, not down. If it goes up, then higher expectations from the notified bodies will be applicable. Then you want to take a look at areas where they will tell you what to do with your clinical evaluation. Chapter 6. You need to start preparing for that today. If you don't do that, you will be late. And that will take lots of work from your group. Then after that, you want to find out that what kind of annexes you will get a certification based on in the future. All the annexes, what we know today, those are gone. So a complete rewrite of your procedures is expected. Until now, we had, I think, 11 or 12 annexes. Now we have 17. There is only one annex which stays at the same place, and it is the basic safety requirements of a medical device, Annex 1. Everything else got renumbered. So we have to learn new numbers and new structures per the regulation. You can see that, there is some good news, a little bit. Okay, the first version, the directive, did not give you too much information about what to put into a technical documentation. Now, you got the homework. There are 2 annexes describing it. One, the technical documentation, and the second one, it is Annex 3, technical documentation of post-market surveillance. Post-market surveillance activities will be part of your technical documentation. You have to plan it. You have to have an aggressive planning, and it means that you have to aggressively collect data and not just wait for getting complaints. Classification, Annex 8. I really suggest that you start somewhere here. If it turns out that something got up-classified and you find it out in the last minute, you are lost with that product. Clinical investigation, you can see the verbiage here. And what I want to emphasize, be sourced from clinical investigations. And then, the next slide, Europe doesn't like that Apple is compared to Orange many times. They want to make sure that you compare Apple to Apple. There will be only one way pretty much, but when you can do the literature way for getting a new product on the market, if it is an updated version of your own product. That's the only way you will be able to avoid clinical studies. Some new terms. These are pretty much all processes around clinical what you will have to develop. I don't know how much you have today, But for instance, do you have a summary of safety and clinical performance report completed once a year, reviewed by your notified body? It will be mandatory for all Class 3 medical devices. Or the SURE, Periodic Safety Update Report. For all medical devices, once a year, you have to provide that. You will have to upload the UDAMED database, and your notified body will have to evaluate it. How much resources you will need for providing all these reports? How many Class 3 medical devices you have? One report per device. The safety and performance, the summary of safety of clinical performance, that needs to be written in a way that a lay person can understand it. We have a validated person, my grandma, okay? If she doesn't understand what you write, that's no pass. Oh, and she speaks only Hungarian, okay? Yeah, but this report goes to the patient, if you want. This will be publicly available. Electronic system, I will not go to the details, but you can see that this UDAMED database is being referenced all over in the regulation. They will collect lots of data, and they expect you to have lots of interaction with this database. You will need resources feeding these databases. They implement the UDI. Who has implemented UDI for the US market recently? You should start it all over. I am sorry. Europe will not take over the American UDI. You will need to get a new number, and you have to re-register all the products, and you have to relabel everything. So, everybody is impacted. Tick, 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 not too much time. You definitely have to start preparing for it, and you have to put their money. Otherwise, it will not work. If you start today, it is already late. Thank you very much. It was a very short version. The most important for me was the timeline. I hope everybody got it. The rest you can find out from the text. Thank you very much.